Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, we're going to break down what the Philadelphia Phillies projected lineups, rotation, and bullpen roles are going to look like and what that means for what the Phils still need to do this offseason.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio for 5 years now. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 3 seasons, and this is my 3rd season as the host of Locked On Phillies, or rather the 3rd year as we're obviously in the off season now. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing the podcast if you're just listening to this in podcast form, available wherever you get your podcast, by the way. And if you're checking us out on YouTube or want to check us out on YouTube, hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Phillies channel. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It'll make it easier to find our content. And it's also the number one way to help us out here on Locked On Phillies. It's a great way to say that you enjoy the content. Subscribe to the YouTube is the best way you can do that. It's the best way you can keep up to date with everything going on with the Phillies this offseason. Now, we're kind of in a dead zone of the offseason a little bit. Our previous episode, I broke down some big dates of the MLB offseason. So if you want to go back and watch our most recent episode, get an idea of what's coming in the 2025 early part of the calendar year, January, February, we broke that down. But right now we're kind of slow. We're heading towards New Year's and getting into 2025. And it's a great time as we're kind of at the midpoint of the offseason to take a look at what the Philadelphia Phillies roster, lineups, bullpen roles, rotation, all of that look like for the 2025 season. If they were playing opening day today, what would be the situation that the Philadelphia Phillies have put themselves in? And is it a good enough one? And that's something that can only be determined by actually working this out. So we're going to start with the lineup and the defensive alignment, of course. We're going to then go to the rotation, and we're going to work through some potential bullpen roles. So let's get going with an easy start to the lineup. So there's no doubt who's going to be leading off for the Philadelphia Phillies in 2025. Once again, it's going to be Kyle Schwarber. He's going to be your DH. There is no debate there whatsoever. And I'm a little bit less concerned as we do this lineup activity as far as like the batting order is concerned, a little bit less worried about that. I'm more focused on what the quality of the overall lineup looks like, talent level of the players. Are there any weak spots? Are there going to be any stretches of the lineup? And this does consider batting order a little bit, but where you look at it and you say, I don't love that 3-man stretch there. I don't love these back-to-back hitters here. So we'll figure that out as we go. But Kyle Schwarber's going to bat lead off until he doesn't play for the Phillies anymore. And then he's probably going to go to another team, or he may stay here for the rest of his career. Who knows? But if he goes to another team, he may bat lead off there. The dude is just, I don't know, man. He works in the leadoff spot. I don't know what to tell you. We're done having that debate. Second is going to be Trey Turner. He just seems to fit really well there. I don't have any issue with him continuing to bat second. Third is going to be Bryce Harper. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, leading off the lineup to start. That is what seems to make the most sense for the Philadelphia Phillies. Lefty, righty, lefty. We're perfect so far. Cleanup is going to be interesting for the Philadelphia Phillies because this team, their true cleanup hitter, we know, would probably be Kyle Schwarber, but he fits well in the leadoff spot, so they've always kind of not had a true cleanup hitter. Going off of what he did last year, I'm going to put Nick Castellanos in that spot. I'm going to have him batting cleanup right now. That could change, but that's what it would be. So Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos is a pretty darn good top 4 in the lineup. There aren't many teams in baseball outside of the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees. Outside of those 3 teams, I don't think you can pick another team in baseball with a better top 4 guys in the lineup than that. 5 spot, we just went righty in the cleanup hole. So I'm going to put a lefty there in the 5 spot. You know what? I like a little bit of pop in that situation. I'm going to go ahead and make Max Kepler the 5-hole hitter for the Philadelphia Phillies. Max Kepler can show off some pop. He's not a exceptional contact hitter, but he's a guy that has had 30-plus home run season at the major league level. That to me sounds like a middle of the lineup guy. But something to remember, like Max Kepler is a guy that's an okay major league player. He's okay. He's probably slightly above average, and at his best, he could be well above average, but consistently slightly above average baseball player. That's your 5-hole hitter. I don't exactly love that right there. That's the first spot of the lineup where I'm like, okay, don't feel great about that. We're going to go ahead and put Bohm in the 6-hole. Yes, Bohm is still on the team in this scenario because this is how the roster stands right now. That could change if that's Bregman. He probably still hits around there, but Bohm batting 6th. I guess we'll have Bryson Stott bat 7th. He needs to have a bounce back year, but I can't put Marsh in that spot. I cannot do it because Marsh's strikeout issues are just, it's too much to worry about. This is where you have a real boon in the lineup potentially if JT Realmuto has a bounce back season as well. I've got him batting 8th, and then I'm going to have Marsh batting 9th. So the defensive alignment, by the way, while we're doing this is much simpler. Obviously, JT catching, Kyle Schwarber DH, Harper at first, Stott at second, Turner at short, Bohm at third. Right field, I'm keeping Castellanos. Left field, I'm putting Kepler. Brandon Marsh is going to be the center fielder in this scenario. But Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Kepler, Bohm, Stott, Realmuto, Marsh. There are no major weak points of that lineup. There are weak individual players if you don't have faith in, like, if you think Bryson Stott's down year in 2024 is indicative of who he's going to be more often than not in his career, you could say, okay, well, I have questions about Stott. Fair. If you think JT Realmuto is over the hill, you could say, well, I have a question about JT Realmuto. Somewhat fair. Marsh strikes out way too much. Totally fair. I understand all of that. Kepler, I don't know what he's going to be. Okay, I got you. Well, that's why they're back half of the order guys. But even that, like your top 4 ironclad, you should have no issues with any of those guys. Kepler at 5S pop. That's fine. You see that. And he's got Castellanos in front of him, and he's got Bohm behind him. Remember, like if Alec Bohm is still on this team, he's still going to be like this 90-plus RBI guy that's going to hit like 270, 280. Maybe a little bit lower than that, but like he's going to have doubles like crazy. He's going to be able to drive in runs. Like that is a good middle of the order bat. And Castellanos, I know is streaky, but when he's hot, those are 2 really good players on either side of Max Kepler that are hitters that give him protection. After Bohm, I mean, if Bryson Stott and JT Realmuto have years that they're capable of, like plus years based on the talent level, those guys batting 7th and 8th is insane. We've had conversations in the past about Bryson Stott's contact ability. And at his best, I still think he's one of the better contact hitters in the National League. Like at his best, I think he can be that. I'm not guaranteeing that type of season for him at this moment in December, but there's a world where we could see that happening. And JT Realmuto is still a plus offensive catcher. Like we got spoiled by who he was the first few years here, or like the majority of his time here in Philadelphia. And now he's not like this best catcher in baseball, crazy, unbelievable offensive numbers from that position, but he's still a well above average offensive option at the catcher position. And he's batting 8th. And I'll tell you what, Brandon Marsh, like say what you want about Brandon Marsh. And I know if you listen to this podcast, if you hear me on the radio, if you hear me talk Phillies baseball and have mentioned Brandon Marsh, you know that I'm higher on Brandon Marsh than the average Philadelphia Phillies fan, person who covers the team, someone who talks about the team. I see stuff from Brandon Marsh in a small capacity, right? He'll have a couple weeks or a month in a season where this dude is like, could he be an all-star? Could he really be that good? He has like some of these exit velocity, advanced contact power stats, stuff like that I try not to get too much into because to me, it's all just this number jumble of trying to convince you that somebody's better than they are or worse than they are. Like I could tell you based on watching a player, is that dude good or not? And I'm not going to say, oh, Brandon Marsh, lock, great baseball player. No, we're not going that far. The strikeouts were a major issue in 2024. But I will say him batting 9th, you could do much worse. There are teams in baseball that would have Marsh batting 6th or 7th. And him turning over the lineup with his speed as well on the base pass, that's a really good spot to be as far as that's concerned. So the strength of the lineup, when you look at it that way, I mean, I'm just looking at all-star potential, right? Schwarber could be an all-star. Turner was an all-star. Harper was an all-star. Castellanos has been an all-star here in Philadelphia. Brandon Marsh, I'm not going to say he's all-star caliber. Or sorry, he's not bad. I have these guys in a weird order in my notes app here. Kepler, probably not an all-star at this point in his career, but Bohm, all-star last year. Stott, I still think has all-star ceiling. Realmuto has been an all-star before. Marsh, probably not an all-star, right? Most likely not an all-star. You only have two guys where you feel comfortable saying, yeah, they're not going to be National League all-stars. The rest of the guys, probably you could make the case that this could be an upcoming all-star season for them. To have 7 of the 9 guys in your lineup be that caliber of player, and it's not for any of those guys really, outside of Realmuto. And I guess Stott, outside of 2 of those guys then. And Stott's not even one of those. But let's just look at the 7 we were talking about. Outside of the 7 that I said, I said Marsh and Kepler. Excuse me. You see, I'm getting all jumbled up now with the lineup trying to put it together. It's not an easy thing to put together a major league lineup, even though there's only 9 positions. But of the 7 guys that have all-star ceilings, you could argue that like 2 of them, it would probably be because of their defense partially, Realmuto and Stott. Then you've got 5 guys that could be all-stars based on their offensive profile alone. That's a damn good lineup, folks. We get all caught up with the names and running it back, and I'm tired of these players because they remind me of a team that's come up short a couple times. Totally fair from a fan's perspective. But from a Major League Baseball front office perspective, there are probably 2, maybe 3 teams in baseball that you would take their lineup over the Philadelphia Phillies. That's it. I think that's realistic to say. You could give me 4 if you think Atlanta's going to have like a bounce back year. I'm trying to think of the other American League team. Maybe Baltimore. I mean, they're in that top tier. Like the more I think about it, the more it's like anyone could make an argument for one of these like top tier lineup teams. But the Philadelphia Phillies are right there with just about all of them. Outside of really the Dodgers, nobody's there with the Dodgers. So you should feel good about the talent level of this team. It's just we're not going to care unless they win the World Series. And that's what's so tough about this team. When the goal and the only acceptable outcome for a season is to win it all, it makes the lens so critical of what the roster is going to be. But make no mistake, the Philadelphia Phillies, and I said in yesterday's episode, I still think they have a big move coming this offseason, another one. Even if they don't, they have a damn good lineup to roll into 2025 with. And they have had one the past 3-4 years now. So I feel really good about where the lineup could be. I feel even better that I think they're still going to add. And if you think you feel good about the lineup, wait till we get into the rotation. My goodness, coming up next, we're going to talk about this pitching rotation. It is an embarrassment of riches for the Philadelphia Phillies when it comes to their starters. We will discuss that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. But let's talk about Rocket Money first, because Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, makes it super simple to take care of, whether it's subscriptions or your spending habits, or this is perfect. New Year right around the corner. It's tomorrow, New Year starts. So if you have the goals you want to hit financially this year, you can keep all of those in Rocket Money, like right there with Rocket Money. It's super easy. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. The money that they have saved, the people who use Rocket Money, could cover any contract on the Philadelphia Phillies. That's nuts. Saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Could you imagine what you do with $740 in your pocket extra to spend this year? That'd be really, really helpful to a lot of people, including maybe you. So go ahead and check them out. They have great features. Like my favorite's a subscription tracker because I have so much stuff that I just forget about day to day of like, oh, I'm still paying for this. So I have this streaming service. Rocket Money takes care of all of that for you. So you don't have to stress about budgeting as much every month. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, this is going to be a fun segment. This is just going to be me gushing about the Philadelphia Phillies rotation and the job that they've done to put this together. So we have the lineup set up. I told you the lineup, pretty strong offensive lineup when it comes to comparing them to other teams around baseball. You can do a lot worse than what the Philadelphia Phillies projected lineup by yours truly looks like right now. And we're only at like the halfway point of the offseason. But the rotation, oh my God. Like, unbelievable. You know the names. It's Wheeler, it's Nola, it's Suarez, it's Sanchez, it's Jesus Luzardo, who the Philadelphia Phillies traded a couple prospects for and acquired from the Miami Marlins. High-level arms. High elite level arms. You could make a case for 4 of the 5 guys for Cy Young votes. Actually, I got to look up Jesus Luzardo's baseball reference page real quick because I want to see if he's ever received vote. I don't think he's ever received votes for a Cy Young award in the National League, but let me go ahead and double check on that. Or it could be the American League as well because he was with Oakland. Cy Young, no, he has not. I didn't think so, but I wanted to double check. He received Rookie of the Year votes in 2020 in Oakland in the American League, but not any Cy Young votes yet. So we'll keep Luzardo out of that whole could be a Cy Young conversation, which, like, he's not going to be anyway, even if he had received votes in the past. There's too much talent in this rotation. That's not a realistic, like, ceiling for him. But that could be your 5, guys. Jesus Luzardo could be your number 5 pitcher in the rotation. Obviously, your number 1 is Zach Wheeler. That is not changing. He is an absolute monster. He was the runner-up for National League Cy Young this year behind Chris Sale, who had an unbelievable season. And Zach Wheeler still had a good enough season to say, hey, I deserve consideration as well. Zach Wheeler is a great number 1, one of the best pitchers in baseball, true bona fide ace. Your number 2 is going to be Aaron Nola. And part of it is going to be reputation, and part of it's going to be ability. Aaron Nola is a guy that on a good amount of teams in baseball, he would be a number 1, right? It's probably not more teams than not. I'd say probably there's, I don't know, 12 to 13 teams that would have Nola as their number 1. And then you have a lot of other guys that are like better than him. But is Aaron Nola a top 20 pitcher in baseball? I'd still like to think so. Top 30? Absolutely. And that's a guy that you're going to have as your number 2. So your number 2 guy is a guy who would be a number 1 on some teams in baseball. Not many teams that can say that. Wheeler 1, Nola 2. Here's where it gets tricky. Who's going to be the number 3 starter this year? And this is something that I think people make too much of a big deal out of when it comes to regular season pitching rotation. For like the first 2 weeks, you're going to match up R1 versus R1 and then vice versa. But you're going to then, after the season gets rolling, have rotations change based on off days and everything like that, and how many games you play and when you play teams at what time. So it really doesn't matter as much as people think, the whole pitching rotation. It matters for the postseason, but in the regular season, who cares, right? But I do want to use this also as not just a focus on who's where in the rotation, but a hierarchy of these arms looking at the starters for the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm going to, this is so tough. Because to me, Ranger Suarez is the more talented pitcher than Christopher Sanchez. But Christopher Sanchez had the better overall season last year, received Cy Young votes, and he was also in a situation where he was more consistent and he's more consistently available. So you could make an argument for both of these guys because Christopher Sanchez was receiving. I don't know though, because Ranger Suarez had a really good start to the year last year, and Christopher Sanchez kind of came on a little bit later. He was good, and then he got great. I'm going to give it to Christopher Sanchez for 2 reasons. If I was the manager of this team and we had to put a rotation together right now, one of the reasons is Christopher Sanchez received Cy Young votes last year. That seems arbitrary, but the margin of difference between him and Ranger Suarez is very, very thin to me. The other thing, though, you signed Christopher Sanchez. He is now on a long-term deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. He's a guy that you know is going to be there. So I'd rather give him that confidence than a guy in Ranger Suarez who could be off the team at the end of the year via free agency, right? They may not re-sign him. They may not offer him an extension before he gets to free agency. The writing seems to be on the wall that Ranger Suarez, unless he has like a monster year and forces the Phillies to re-sign him, I think this is probably his last year as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. So I'd rather get Sanchez acclimated to that spot in the rotation and then have Suarez for it. But again, razor thin margins as far as that's concerned. So you have Sanchez 3, you have Suarez 4, all 4 of your top 4 pitchers. You could argue for Cy Young caliber pitching. All of those guys have either received votes for a Cy Young award or, in Ranger Suarez's case, with more consistent availability, would have received big-time votes. He was arguably the best pitcher in baseball for like the first 3 months of the year. And then you go with Jesus Luzardo, who, like, that dude, he's probably not a 1 on any teams, but he could be a 2 on some of the lesser teams in baseball, and he's your 5? Like, that's insane. Jesus Luzardo, just a throw-in 5th starter to make up for Taijuan Walker not being a major league level pitcher. That's crazy. And on top of that, Andrew Painter is one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball. And you could move him into the rotation next year to take Ranger Suarez's spot if the Phillies decide that this is the last year they want Suarez on the team. Painter could come in and be better than Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo, like, this year. Like, he could be... He's not going to be better than Wheeler, and he probably, like, won't be better than Nola. But this dude is, like, an insane level talent. Like, that, the pitching rotation is the best part of this team, both in the current Major League roster and looking at the future perspective for the Philadelphia Phillies. I love where they're at. I can't say enough. I love where they're at, this pitching staff. I feel really good about that. But for the time being, where I'm going to put it is Wheeler's your 1, Nola's your 2, Sanchez your 3, Suarez your 4, Luzardo your 5. Good luck hitters in the National League, American League, any league. Good luck anybody who picks up a baseball bat in the vicinity of Citizens Bank Park. These guys are going to be an absolute problem on the mound this year for anybody. And when you see some of the moves teams around baseball have been making to build up their offensive side of the equation, we'll take our chances with our guys, all right? Because we got a pitching staff that can match up with any of them. Any of them. I absolutely love what the Philadelphia Phillies did in acquiring Luzardo, and I've loved this rotation for a while now, considering how great of a year they had in 2024. But as great as the starting rotation was in 2024, or I guess I should just say the rotation, the bullpen has like a major black mark on it after the postseason and what they did against the Mets, or rather what they didn't do, which was get outs without giving up runs. And that's crazy because the bullpen was actually really, really good in 2024 in the regular season. They just absolutely soiled themselves when it mattered most. What is the setup for the bullpen in 2025? How many spots are still available? And what are the roles? Who would fit in where? We've talked about like who should be on the team a little bit as guys get acquired, but where would you have these guys? I'm going to try and give my best breakdown for roles are very fluid as well for the Philadelphia Phillies when it comes to their bullpen. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, but I'll do my best to explain where I think these guys slot in as we wrap up today's episode. All right, so here's what's tricky about the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen. Here are the guys that I believe are locks to be in the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen at the major league level in 2025. Tanner Banks is going to be he's going to be at the major league level. He is. He'll be in the bullpen. Ryan Kirkring will be. Jordan Romano will be. Jose Alvarado will be. Matt Strahm will be. And I also believe Joe Ross will be. Actually, let's throw Jose Ruiz in there too. So basically, everybody is accounted for besides one spot. You have like 7 guys that you can say pretty confidently right now, you guys are going to be on the major league roster. Bullpen normally 8 guys. So who's the 8th guy? Who is the final spot? I was looking through some of the names on the 40-man and trying to figure it out, and it doesn't look like the Phillies have a clear option. They have one more spot. Now, how great would it be if that spot becomes a guy like Carlos Estevez or Jeff Hoffman, and you bring back one of those power arms, and then you just say, yeah, we got a super-powered bullpen again. Good luck. Anytime you see any pitcher in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform, it's not just a starting rotation. Bullpen's going to be nasty too. Like, I would love that. But for the time being, the name that I have here is Michael Mercado. Part of the reason is some of your big-time arms, the best pitchers in your bullpen, are high-leverage guys, which means shorter innings guys. So you needed someone who could eat innings a little bit more. The only true guys of the roster locks that are going to give you a couple innings possibly are going to be Ross and Ruiz. You could argue Banks, but Banks seems more of like a one-inning guy still to me, a lefty specialist. And all the other guys I'd rather have in big-time spots or available for big-time spots. So Michael Mercado, who made starts for the Phillies last year. I think he's a guy that you could have in the Major League bullpen if you need like a longer reliever. Also, talking through that, you may need another longer reliever. So maybe that's a better way to approach things in free agency, is bring in one of those guys if you can't get a high-level arm in like a Tanner Scott or a Jeff Hoffman or Carlos Estevez. But those are the names. Now, how do they stack up? We'll start from the back, right? Who would be the closer on this team right now? As much as Matt Strahm probably deserves it with an all-star level season last year, I don't think he's just like, I don't think closer when I see Matt Strahm. I don't. And it's not like he's not good enough to be. I just don't get that feel. Closers have a certain feel. They have a certain look to them. And Matt Strahm to me feels like an eighth inning guy, lefty on lefty. Give me a great inning and get us to that last one. But he doesn't feel like that last inning guy to me. So I'm going to have, as it stands right now, Jordan Romano be the closer for the Philadelphia Phillies. Two-time All-Star as a closer in Toronto. Tough year last year with injuries, but I still think he's capable of going out there and figuring out a way to close games for the Philadelphia Phillies. So Jordan Romano is going to be the guy that gets the ball in the final inning in save situations. That could change if you bring back Estevez or Hoffman. I would take both of those guys as closers over Jordan Romano. But right now, it's Romano. Your top lefty arm for high leverage is Strahm, who we just talked about. Your top righty arm for high leverage is Orion Kerkering. That's going to be your eighth inning guys, depending on the handedness of the batters or who you want to go with in that spot. But Strahm and Kerkering are the next ones up. Now, your seventh inning guys, I think you have two pretty darn good ones. And that would be Jose Alvarado, who could be an eighth inning guy. Like, he could be a high leverage guy if he has a better year than he did in 2024. In his last month of the 2024 season, when you look at the numbers, big time bounce back for him. So he was trending in the right direction when the 2024 season concluded. Just not a great overall year for him. But I still believe in the stuff. Like, the guy throws gas. He's got great movement. He's been incredible in the past for points. I just think it was a weird year for him. Your mid-leverage righty is going to be Jose Ruiz, who frankly deserves better than what Philadelphia Phillies fans talk about him as. He's kind of just like a guy here in Philadelphia, and he had an outstanding 2024 season. Like, he has been very, very good over the last calendar year for the Philadelphia Phillies. To have him available is probably like your sixth best arm in the bullpen. Or fifth or sixth best arm. Incredible. You love to see that, to have that type of depth for the Philadelphia Phillies. Then you have Tanner Banks, who kind of exists in his own role, where he's like not a long inning guy, but he's also not a high leverage guy. He's kind of just like this lefty specialist, where maybe if you're in a spot in like the seventh or eighth inning and you don't have a lefty available that day, you say, okay, we're going to go to Tanner Banks and we're going to have him try and get us out of that. And it's not like Tanner Banks stinks. He's just, his splits are so much better against lefties that it seems to really help the Philadelphia Phillies most if he's in those spots. Ross is a guy that is going to be your long reliever, where if you run into trouble and you need to get like 3 innings, that's probably the guy that you look at. Like, let's say, bad start by somebody in the starting rotation, which probably won't happen at all this season because this rotation is nasty. But, I mean, it always happens occasionally to everybody in baseball. Starter goes out there, gives you 4 innings. You got to get 3 to get to those high leverage arms. Okay, go get it, Ross. Joe Ross will get that job done for the Philadelphia Phillies this year. And Michael Mercado is just, I guess, by default in this scenario thrown into like the long relief role as well. But that's only because I don't think the Phillies are done adding to the bullpen and they could throw another arm in there. But like, do you really need one is the other thing, right? Do you really need like the all-star caliber arms? Let's talk about this, right? Jordan Romano is all-star caliber. Orion Kerkering is all-star caliber. Matt Strahm is all-star caliber. Jose Alvarado is all-star caliber. Like, you have multiple guys. Jose Ruiz, sneaky, could be an all-star caliber reliever. Like, I don't think all these guys are going to be all-stars, but like, it would not surprise me if they reach that level. This team is stacked, folks. The bullpen is deep and talented. The rotation arguably could be the best in baseball. The lineup is one of the best in baseball, and they got all-stars up and down it. It's just, this team is so darn good. And that's why they were one of the best teams in baseball last year in the regular season and won the NL East. And like the more you move away from the pain of losing to the Mets in what feels like years ago, the NL divisional series, you now look at it and say, okay, I can come to terms with why this lineup is so talented and won so many games, and we should have faith in this team going forward. Like that, like as you finish up this episode, if you're like me, you should be feeling pretty darn good about the Philadelphia Phillies. I know people are negative on this team in some capacity because of the way the last season ended, but I think that was a fun exercise to show you, hey, there is a heck of a lot of talent on this team, and they're already pretty well set up, and we've still got half of the offseason to go. So if there's another big move in there to throw a wrench in everything, it'll probably even further improve this team. And to further improve a team that talented, we're lucky to be Phillies fans, folks. We're lucky to be Phillies fans, I promise you. And hopefully that plays out over the course of the 2025 season. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Our final episode for the year 2024 will be a year in review episode, so we'll get that one out to you soon as well. But thank you so much for checking us out. Once again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. And I'll talk to you on our next episode of Locked On Phillies.